I'm Steph Hodge with Board Game Geek, here with Richard and James Denning with Medusa Games, and we're looking at flying machines, yes?
Yes.
Magnificent flying machines.
Oh, magnificent flying machines.
Yep.
Perfect. This is about the early planes, sort of?
Yeah, it's based on the early air races of around about 1910 to 1913.
That's so cool. That's such a cool theme.
There was lots of times. Suddenly they went berserk for these, and there were lots of them. But the closest one, I guess, that inspired it is the Round Britain race of about 1911, where 32 pilots from all around the world took part. 32 took off, but only 4 got all the way around the course. And there were lots of disasters and calamities along the way. So we thought, well, that'd be quite a cool idea for a game.
Cool. Absolutely. So you're kind of racing planes here, doing tricks?
Yeah, so the aim of the game is obviously to get the most points and be the winner, but that doesn't necessarily mean being the first to the final airfield. So if you just plough through and get there, once you get to the final airfield, there's not a lot you can do while you're waiting for everyone else to come in and they can get more points and
Oh yeah, you gotta
So you can get points, for instance, for doing trick manoeuvres in the air. First person to land on any particular square gets points for that, providing they make a good landing. Crash landing doesn't earn you any points.
No impress.
Yeah. You also get points for taking passengers on board. You can pick them up and take them to the next town or the next airfield. And there's also cargo to deliver to various places. And if you don't manage to deliver the cargo, then there are minus points for that as well.
Yeah.
Similarly, if your plane gets damaged, there's ways to repair it, but even so, that can still lose you some points. There's one of the things they had here in the actual races. They gave prizes for the best painted plane and that sort of thing.
The one with the most bits intact at the end. Yeah, sort of thing. So what you've got in front of you is sort of main elements of the board. You've got the racetrack here, which is a series of these terrain tiles. There's 15 of them in the game, but any given race you tend to use 11 of them, so there's a bit of variety.
And you can just change them each game.
You can change it. So we've got this preset course. As you see, there's little numbers on them, 1, 2, 11.
Yeah.
So this is straight out the box. This is a course we suggest you play with.
I see, yes.
But equally, after you've done that, you can then randomise things. So you've got airfield spaces, you've got little fields, towns, water areas, and then mountains. And they have varying difficulties in terms of getting airborne, getting in the air, flying across them, and landing. So mountains are difficult to pretty much everything, taking off, landing, and flying through. Whereas your airfields are nice and easy to do things on. But what affects also that is the weather, which you can see above them, just up here. So this is so that would affect the difficulty in that area because it makes it more difficult because it's windy. The other elements on the board here is we've got the actual fly machine, dashboards as we call them, and these come in two sorts. They're two-sided. So on one side you've got this preset with a suggested configuration to go straight out the box again, and over there's one that's just out of shot. But the other side of it is a blank. It's a blank sort of starting board, if you like, and put it into shot there. And there you can see we can actually put different pilots on and choose different equipment.
So you can customise it a little bit.
So you can customise. So the idea is to begin with, you can just go with the nice preset ones.
Oh yeah, of course.
And it explains you to hear what they do, what bits do, or you can build your own. So those are most of the elements.
Variable player abilities.
That's right.
Then.
The weather changes as per a weather change cards that we've got here. The other main elements are the dice, which are a core, obviously, mechanic in the game, which we'll explain in a second. And then finally, we've got these trick and boost cards. These are two sorts. They either give you an advantage in the game, which are the sort of like the lighter colour, or the dirty trick cards, where you can do nasty things to other players.
Oh yes.
So in terms of game mechanics, when you're looking to do anything, there are 2 phases to each turn. You can do 2 things. So you can take off and fly and land and take off. And to do any of those things, you're going to have to pass a test. So if I was taking off here, for example, the terrain here, the difficulty of taking off is 2. Because of the weather, that becomes 3. So I need to get 3 takeoff symbols. And if I'm using the triplane, I've got 5 dice to do it with. So I take my 5 dice, roll them and see. We've got 2, so that would be okay on if the weather was better, but the weather isn't better, so therefore we're going to have to do something about that. So what could I do? well, I've got a spare part here. I could use that spare part, and that would then give me enough to pass the test.
So you just throw that away.
It's a one-shot deal.
Yeah, one-shot deal. Yeah.
Alternatively, some people have abilities that they can re-roll dice. Some of the pilots do that. Some bits of equipment do that. This is a flying manual. It actually makes the terrain one little bit easier. So you've got 4 charges there, but again, you could use one of those charges to make it easier. If you don't manage to do any of that, I've failed a test. So I was trying to take off. If I hadn't got the explosion, I'd have just not taken off. I'd be stuck on the ground. However, I did have an explosion. So something's gone bang or fallen off, so I'm also going to take damage. So we have damage markers that come on. And again, on this plane over here, this guy's had a bit of a bad time. He's got 2 damage markers.
Yep.
Currently no fuel. He's going to have to repair before he can do anything else.
I see. And so you can repair on your turn instead?
Yeah, so that's another thing you can do if you're on the ground. You can repair.
You're on the ground. Okay.
Some pilots can actually jury-rig things as they're flying,
wow.
but most of them can't do that.
That's
So
awesome.
you can, and there are lots of ways around problems such as failing tests. So this is what all the equipment's about, and spare parts, but also these cards. So these trick and boost cards, it might be that you've got one that you can play. Now, one thing at the bottom, they have symbols. You notice, we put those there. So this is a takeoff symbol.
Yeah.
So I can either use this card for the text that's on it, or I can
Use it
throw
for
away
the
the card
symbol.
as if it was a spare part.
So that would be a case where you definitely want to do that.
Yeah, you do
and
that,
you can
that's it.
and you can pick up 1 card per turn, so you can use as many as you like, but you're only going to get them back at the rate of 1 per turn.
So even though you would successfully do this, you wouldn't take an explosion, would
No,
you?
No,
if you
because
pass
you've
the
done that.
test, you're okay.
You're okay.
Regardless of how many explosion symbols.
I was like, oh.
If you fail, then there are consequences. We take
I
them.
see. Great.
So you're progressing in the race by a series of effective reactions. So if you see these little shafts, maybe that'll be easier there. So it says there, in each turn you have 2 phases. You choose an action in each phase, then finally you draw another one of these cards. So your choices are to either take off, to do a repair and scavenge action, to fly on, to do a trick manoeuvre, to gain altitude, which makes it easier to fly later, and then finally to land. So those are the choices in each action you're doing. You can repeat the same action if you want. So you can try and
You could
take
do
off and fail.
2 tricks if you want.
Two tricks and so on. But every time you move on in the course, which you're doing like this, every additional space that you move through, you'll lose a dice. So there's a bit of a push your luck mechanic going on. How far do you want to go?
I'm gonna have a lot of explosions in my game.
But also you can see there are fuel rules. So you see that if you move 0 spaces or 1 space, you don't actually use any fuel. You're just meandering along.
Because the idea is you've got enough fuel to just go along at a steady pace, but then if you want to go faster, then you use more fuel.
So 2,
That
3 or
makes
4
sense.
spaces.
Yes.
So what you'll tend to do quite often is you'll tend to go a couple of spaces, land, pick something up or drop something off,
Passenger,
take off again, and so
cargo.
on. And then there may come a point in the race where you go for the longer run to try and catch up or to get ahead.
Yeah,
to get towards the
because
end.
although when you finish, the first person to land doesn't end the game, they can still do things, then once all but one of the planes, or in a 5 or 6 player game, all but 2 of them have landed, the others have only got 1 turn left, so you don't want to fall too far behind.
No, of course.
And as we say, that we've mentioned things like dirty tricks. So there is an element in here of a little bit of competition between the players. You can play a version of the game without that. You can just take those cards out, but kind of what's the fun in that, really? But you can just take all the dirty trick cards out. So you can play these dirty trick cards. So here's one where it says, a piece of cargo worth up to 3 points is discarded from a fly machine. So you've cut the ropes effectively, and the cargo's fallen off.
Yeah, so cargo can go anywhere. We've got 2 types of storage, the inside and the outside. Cargo can go anywhere. Spare parts can go anywhere, but if you want to use them in flight, they need to be inside.
Yeah.
Yes.
Passengers, for some reason, don't like being on the outside, so
Why?
they have to go in the inside.
So what you do is you then have a choice. So here we've only got three internal spaces.
So you'd
if
have
I
to
want to
take
take that,
up 2.
I'd have to throw away a spare part in order to get the space to put the
Very
passenger
good,
into.
very good. And each plane is different, so like
yes.
this one can hold 2 passengers. If
So
you're-
this is a seaplane. So there's some that have more space and capacity. There's others that are perhaps faster, or more agile, and therefore you might vary your strategy. So it might be with this one you'll be thinking about picking up lots of things and dropping them off, but it's not quite as fast as this one. So this is more likely to get ahead of it, perhaps to be the first person to land. And in fact, this pilot's a special ability. He gets a bonus point if he claims the first to land marker. So if he
he's
landed
first there,
here,
he gets-
he picks up the 1 point. He gets a bonus point because
That's really good. So he
for
would
him.
be doing
So
that.
you're thinking, right, we'll get there first. Try and land, maximise those points.
This pilot, by contrast, ignores one of the weather things. So
Oh, that's really
the weather
good.
things, you still have some effect from the weather, but less so. So he's very useful in that way.
seems really
They
good.
all have different things. There's a helicopter, which is very good at taking off and landing, not very good
Terrible
at
at
actually moving.
moving.
No
There's a
tricks.
monoplane, which whizzes along, but is rubbish at landing. So again, it's also a matter of style. How do you want to play the game? Which type of player are you? Which plane have you got, and what do you match with it? So it's really a matter of building the best plane, but for your particular vehicle and for your style of play.
Yes.
Yeah. And this plays up to 6 players, you said?
It'll take them 6, so you'd actually play from 2 to 6. So with 2 players, we suggest that each player takes 2 fly machines,
Okay.
and then you alternate each turn. I do this
Yes.
one for one turn, and then I do that one the next
And
turn.
it's a
so
team
on.
event, so then once one team has landed both of its planes, the other team's got one more turn
I
in
see.
order to finish.
And you add the scores together.
But again, you can play in teams, you can play as individual people, but the first time out the box, it's probably best to grab a third person, because trying to keep track of 2 planes until you know what
harder,
you're doing
sure.
is a bit hard.
And this is available today?
Yes,
Absolutely.
It's,
So our stand is the next one over to yours, so that's really
Perfect.
handy.
Behind you.
And our partners, Board Game Box, also have some copies in
Hall 2.
That is great. And will we be able to get it in the US or in Europe? later?
Yeah, we're looking at distribution into the US.
That's great.
We haven't got an actual US partner, but there's a couple of options we're looking at for fulfillment or for distribution into the
But
US.
obviously,
So
if
we're
anybody's
hoping to get
interested in that role, we
Oh, yes.
obviously hear
Well, it
But
sounds
certainly-
really great,
but
and
certainly
it's a
throughout
really
Europe.
cool theme. So thanks for coming by and showing us this game.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
thank
All right,
you.
thank you.